All right, so the next thing we're talking about with trig is called inverse trig functions. Okay, so we're going to be finding inverse, so we're going to be dealing with inverse trig functions. Now, the word inverse, we've seen it before in class. We talked about inverse of polynomial equations. And if you remember those notes from that you had from when we took them, it's similar. The only difference is we're dealing with trig functions now. Okay, so a little bit of vocabulary. So inverse sine. Inverse sine. Sometimes they'll say inverse sine. Sometimes they'll say arc sine. Sometimes they'll give you this symbol. Okay, they all mean the same thing. Inverse cosine, arc cosine, that symbol there with a little -1 power, they all mean inverse cosine. Okay, same thing with tangent. So sometimes it's called inverse sine or arc sine, inverse cosine, arc cosine, inverse tangent, arc tangent. Okay, they all mean the same thing. Also, it's not a reciprocal. Okay, remember, inverses does not mean reciprocal. Okay, inverse is different than the reciprocal. The reciprocal of cosine is cosecant. The reciprocal of sine is cosecant. The reciprocal of cosine is secant, and the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent. Okay, those are different. These are actually trig functions. Okay, this is inverse of trig functions. So these guys do not go with these guys. Okay, they're not the same. That means inverse and not reciprocal. Okay, so far, and the problems we've been completing so far, the ones you've been doing, I've always given you the angle measure. So kind of like this. I said cosine of this angle, cosine of this angle. And then you go to the unit circle, and sine, we know sine is y over radius, or on the unit circle, it's y over 1. So then we would go down to the unit circle, and I believe it's pi over 4. Y is square root of 2 over 2. So we would say square root of 2 over 1, which is just the square root of 2 over 2. Okay. Cosine of 2 pi over 3. Okay. So 2 pi over 3, well, first of all, cosine is x over radius, which is x over 1. So 2 pi over 3 is the same as, let's see here, as 120 degrees. And the x coordinate 120 is -1/2. So it would be -1/2. That's what we've been doing so far. Okay? The angle measure was given. And you were to find the ratio. Okay? Now, what inverse means is the complete opposite. Just the opposite. Now they're going to give you the ratio. So they're going to give you these guys here. And they want you to find the angle measure. That's what we're going to be looking for. That's the way the questions are going to be worded now with inverse. So it's just the opposite steps. Okay, they're going to give you the ratio. They want, where is that true? Where does sine square root of 2 over 2? Okay, that's what they want to figure out at pi over 4. Where is cosine -1/2? At 2 pi over 3. Okay. So let's look at some questions here. So this is what the questions are going to look like. Find the exact value of inverse sine 2 pi over 3. Or sorry, square root of 2 over 2. Okay. So if we remember, sine is y over 1. Or y over r, I should say. But on the unit circle, it's always y over 1, right? So pretty much what we're doing is, where is y? Square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so let's go to the unit circle. So where is y at the square root of 2 over 2? Well, we have it here. We have it here. And that's about it, because these guys are negative here. These guys have negative square root 2 over 2. So we don't want those guys. Okay, so what's the answer? Which one's the answer? Is it both? Is it pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4? Is it one of them? Is it neither of them? What's the deal here? Well, let me give you a little cheat sheet here. This is what we're looking on the unit circle. So what we were doing right now is this one here. We're doing arc sine, which is the same as inverse sine. If we're looking for inverse sine or arc sine, we only look here. Negative root 2 to positive, or sorry, negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. That's all we're looking for. Okay, so let's go back to the unit circle. On the unit circle, that's this region right here. Remember, this is negative, so negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. That's the only region I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the left side. So the only one that's there is pi over 4. Pi over 4 is the only one. I'm not looking at 3 pi over 4. That's not what I'm looking at because that is not on that side. So the answer, let's go back up to this guy here, is pi over 4. Okay, so find the exact value of cosine, of inverse cosine at negative 3 pi, negative square root of 3 over 2. Well, cosine is x over r, which is the same as x over 1 on the unit circle. So let's go find out where x is negative root 3 over 2. Okay, so x is negative root 3 over 2. Let's go find it. Let's see, x is negative root 3 over 2. There's one right there. There's one right there. I believe that's it. The rest are positive. Okay, so which one? Are we going to use both? Are we going to use one? Are we going to use the other? What's the deal there? Well, cosine or arc sine, we only use 0 to pi. That's the range we're looking at. So let's go back. 0 to pi, 0 to pi. Stop right there. So I'm only looking up here, not looking down there. And the only one that's there is, the angle measure is 5 pi over 6. So let's go back up. There we go. That's the angle measure. Okay. And then the last one is arc tangent of square root of 3. Okay, so this one is a little different. We're going to do a little work here because if you remember, it's y over x. Okay, so something divided by something makes square root of 3. Well, you can also use your charts. You guys made charts for your homework. So you know by looking at those charts, where is tangent going to be equal to square root of 3? Okay, so right now pause it and go look at your chart. Where is it going to be square root of 3? So that I have at two places. I have at 60 degrees, which is the same as pi over 3. And I also have it as square root of positive square root of 3 at 240, which as radians, 240 is the same as 4 pi over 3. That's where I have tangent equal to square root of 3. Well, let's go here. Let's go to our cheat sheet here. Where are we looking exactly? Well, arc tangent, we only look the same spot we look for arc sine. Negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. Okay, so let's go down here again. Negative pi over 2, that's right here, to positive pi over 2, that's right here. So we're looking right here. And the only one that was there was 60 degrees. 60 degrees is the one that's there. So either a 60 or a pi over 3. This one we're not going to be able to use. Okay.